All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's virtual wine tasting for Tipple's Brews and Wine. This is Elizabeth and Jeff Vaudrey, the owners of Tipple's Brews. Thank you for joining us again for a wonderful new wine this week. As you'll remember from last week, we are heading for the first time, and really it's been inappropriately long, we're heading to Portugal. We're drinking a dry red blend from Portugal. Portugal's really famous for their sweeter wines, their dessert wines called port. Like champagne, if it's not from Portugal, it's not port.
Okay.
All right. So, though I don't know that they've been able to lock down that name quite as tightly as champagne.
Okay.
So you may see some things use it, but truthfully, if it's not from Portugal, it's not port.
So as far as like locking down the champagne name, do they go after people?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Legally.
Right.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So, all right. So if you have not already done so, please go ahead and pop open your wine. We'll switch over to the slide and I'll intro.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I do want to mention that we do have snacks in front of us tonight because Jeff said it was a very big wine and we would need snacks. So if you don't have snacks, you might want to grab, we have crackers and cheese. You might want to grab something.
Right. So this is the Wine and Soul Manoella Tinto. So Manoella is the location.
Okay.
That is not the grape. It is a blend of Portuguese grapes, which we will get into in just a moment. 43 points, Wine Enthusiast, 91 points, Wine Spectator. I thought that's a hearty way to jump into Portugal.
Absolutely.
I'd say I really am a fan of Portuguese dry reds. I think that more Americans should be really, really drinking these wines on a regular basis. They'll be extremely happy. You know, it's kind of like the way I feel about Nero d'Avola, the grape in Sicily. I think more Americans should be drinking that grape and they'd be really happy with it. Dry reds from Portugal, same thing. It's a big red. Food pairings, prime rib, blackened ribeye steak. That's pretty much as big as you're going to get, right? Pulled pork, garlic sauteed shiitake mushrooms. I want those right now.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So also, if you heard the wine glugging, you want to talk about why you did that?
Oh, well, I gave it a good hard pour to just let it aerate a little faster. A hard pour and then a swirl. Just abuse your wine as you put it in your glass. Abuse it, abuse it, stir it up.
And explain what aeration does.
All right, so you are allowing oxygen to contact all of the different, all the different molecules in your wine, which will allow it to relax and open up. This can be very tight and acidic base, and the acid will relax, the richness will open up, and the tannins will go from bitey and prickly to something a little more velvety, a little more pleasant.
Do you want me to stop the share or go to the next slide?
Let's go ahead and stop the share. We'll go over our thoughts first, and we'll get back into the varietal content and such after that. 14% alcohol on this, so not a huge alcohol beast. Right in the middle. Really nice dark blackberry on the nose right now. Black cherry, so darker fruit. And some nice spiciness. Right? You can get a little bit of a pepperiness,
yes.
A little bit of a baker's spice, allspice kind of thing.
I definitely get the pepper. I don't know if I'm getting the allspice.
And a hint, and I think this will come out more as we go, smokiness.
Just a hint right now.
Yeah.
But yeah. So are these grapes that we've had before? No. New country, new grapes.
That's one of the cool things about Portugal is the Portuguese wine industry developed autonomously within Europe relatively. And so their grapes are only their grapes for the most part, vast majority. And their style is their style. Great and wonderful, big, dry, grippy, right?
Oh, yeah.
You can see why I wanted food. It's a big wine.
Yeah, it is grippy.
Really nice.
Well, I mean, I'm not getting like a bite from it at all.
No,
but
it's
so I guess you aerated it enough that it wasn't
just
too tight.
enough. Yeah, right. And it'll get better and it will relax as we go. But it's kind of like a muscular velvet, if I were to go with, like they're not harsh tannins, but they are firm. I mean, they're very abundant and they are strong. So that also makes it a more healthful wine because the antioxidant content of a wine is generally works with the tannins. So the more tannic your wine, the more the bundled package of all the antioxidant goodness. Actually, I was just reading this week too, an interesting point. Something I've never said before, but it makes total sense, is that the healthiest red wines in the world, as far as giving you antioxidants, are tied to highly tannic young reds. Because an older red
we almost had red wine everywhere.
So, you age a wine. This wine could age 14% alcohol, really nice tannin. It's not tasting like dried grapes. So you've got some acidity left in there. So this wine could definitely age. You could put this guy down for another 10 years easily.
Okay.
But as they age, they relax. The tannins relax, and some of you would think if you have an older vegetable, it's not going to have the nutritional content of a young vegetable. Okay. Right? So same thing.
So if you're strictly drinking wine for your health,
which
you drink younger wines.
That's right.
And a lot of them.
You just glug it right down, right? That's my favorite dietitian told me 2 to 3 bottles a day in order to get the antioxidants.
Look at her face.
All right, because this is being recorded. Just kidding. I did not mean that. Do not condone 2 to 3 bottles a day.
But as far as the younger tannic wines, that is more healthy than the aged ones then.
Yes.
Yeah, that is the truth.
That is.
Okay.
Yes. There's a nice minerality on here. I would almost go a little bit of red clay quality to the nose, right? Delightful wine. And this is what I love about Portuguese reds. So really reasonably priced. You've got a lot going on here. I'm discussing, you've got big fruit. Americans love that, but it dries out. You have wonderful tannins and you have wonderful secondary qualities in here where we're talking about minerality, herbacity, spiciness. There's a lot going on in this glass of wine and at a great price.
Yeah, I was a little worried when you said the Portuguese were known for the sweet wines because I had forgotten that the other week you said ports were Portuguese. But so I was a little worried, but it's not sweet.
It is not.
So I'm very happy.
No. I tell you, the Portuguese wines, I mean, I love the fact that they're powerhouses. They're really great. They can be much more velvety than this. I do have one in the store that is kind of a big fruity wine without the real tight dryness and that kind of a thing. So it can go back and forth. But this is a really good representation of most style from the dry red Douro region within there. Let's go over to the slides, please.
Okay. This one?
Yes. All right. So here is the blend. 60% Touriga Nacional. All right. Touriga Nacional, when you're drinking Portuguese red wines, they're not always, but nearly always going to have Touriga Nacional. That is, I like to think of it as the national grape of Portugal. So Touriga Franca, Tinta Roriz, and Tinta Francisca. So Touriga Nacional is 60%, 25% Touriga Franca, 10% Tinta Roriz, 5% Tinta Francisca. The Touriga Nacional does the heavy lifting on color and fruit content and tannins. Touriga Franca adds the spiciness and acidity. Tinta Roriz is actually Tempranillo. So I say there's not a crossover, but there's some crossover. So it's actually Tempranillo. So you get a little bit of both. Tempranillo kind of sits in the middle there with, you get spicy, you get red fruits,
So it's just adding some complexity to each of those.
It is. It's kind of lifting a bit of each.
Okay.
And then the last one Tinta Francisca is a bit like Pinot Noir. So in that one, it's adding extra freshness and acidity is the biggest point of it. Right. So, all right. And of course, my what I say every week, one picture for all the red grapes because they all kind of look alike. So those are actually Merlot grapes.
But
I'm kidding. I don't even.
You don't know.
No. They were like, but they all look like this. They
but
do.
like we said before, if you tasted them, they would taste.
They would
different.
taste
They all
different.
look alike, but
Right, they do.
Yeah.
They
If you sliced them open, I guess you would see a difference too because of the thickness of the different skins. So, and then if
Absolutely.
they're side by side, some of them are smaller than others.
Right. If you had them side by side, within separate pictures, you're not going to be able to see it. But if you literally put the individual grapes side by side, you'd be able to see the difference
Then
in
you would see
diameter. But anyway, essentially, they look like this. All right. So we have a combination of grapes here where we're working with the Touriga Nacional. It's going to have the thicker, denser outer layers on the skin. And then, you get all the way down to and it kind of runs on a spectrum here, as you get through there. So then you're going to have more intensity from the acid and thinner skin as you go down the list, from to the, Touriga Franca, Tinta Roriz, and then Tinta Francisca, as you just run down. So you'll get thinner skins, a little lighter color, and but then more intensity in the acidity as you run down the list. But and that's where you can see where this makes a lot of sense to put in there as a balance when you're creating a red blend. Interestingly, you can put this exact same blend together and make port.
Oh,
and make
what
the dessert
changes
wine.
it?
Later harvest is you're going to get more sugar involved in there. And then the other thing with port is it actually has a little bit of liquor added to it. It's a fortified wine, which is why it has so much higher alcohol and gives some different richness in character. We will be drinking a port.
You keep saying that.
I know. It's going to happen. So we may wait until it cools off a little.
Yeah,
but
that sounds good.
which would be fun. Do something in the fall. But that'll be good. And there are multiple different styles of port. So we may have to hit it twice, but we'll do it like 4 or 5 months apart.
Okay.
All right. So next slide, please. Okay. So where are we? We are in Portugal, right here, just about the dead center of the growing latitudes. Spain is kind of one of those that I like to show where you can grow wine throughout the nation, and Portugal top to bottom is similar, as we'll see here. So we're in the Douro, which is named for the river Douro, which is the same river as when we were in Ribeira de Duero. So in Spain, Duero, in Portuguese, Douro. So this is definitely about that river valley. In fact, it's a very steep river valley, which we'll take a look at a little bit later. It's uses terraced vineyards. I was just going
to ask if they used that.
Yep. They've been making wine in Portugal. Here we go. Kind of I always like to see, where you can see like the mountains here, and so you've got some elevation going on. The river runs all the way out into the ocean. And Dow is another one we'll have to taste later. Dow is excellent as well. Vino Verde, by the way, is the white wine, the national white wine that you would get from Portugal. Not the only, but certainly the dominant. Vino Verde is a grape that should be, in my opinion, one of the most important summer wines for the state of Florida. So Vino Verde means green wine. Yeah. And it is a light greenish gold and lightly frizzante, lower in alcohol, and is a nice, crisp, beautiful, thirst-quenching wine.
So are we going to have that?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay.
We should do that in the next couple of weeks. Brian will be thrilled.
Yeah, we have to make sure he's here for that one.
That's right. So you see, we're really close to the border here with Spain.
Absolutely.
Within the Douro Valley, the Cimacorgo, this is the subregion that we are in. Right there in the center. So let me see here. Portugal has been making wine since about 2000 BC.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Developed largely in isolation, largely at this point, what you would call indigenous grapes, because they have lost where the origin came from, or it really was indigenous.
Okay. So can I ask you a question? Can I interrupt you a moment?
Yeah.
So, but Touriga Franco,
Franca.
Franca, is that not French? Does that not mean French?
I'm
France?
almost certain it's got to be related to Cab Franc.
Okay.
Because it also serves almost the exact same purpose.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So, yes.
But it's had the name forever, and no, it's not from France.
Yeah, it's one of those things where realistically, but unless you go really deep in, it's hard to find that information. In addition to, there's conflicting information. Okay. So it kind of makes it difficult for me to say, no, this clearly came from here. This came from here. There's conflicting information, and people argue about what's going on. So know what? I'm not going to enter the fray.
They're European, so they certainly argue about it.
I am not going to enter the argument and just go with they. At this point, it has changed as a grape. It is not the exact same, and so it's the Portuguese grape. These are Portuguese grapes. This is the way it expresses itself is unique to Portugal.
And I interrupted you, so you can go back into what you were talking about.
That's fine. I was ready for a sip.
Okay.
Covered the name of the region is for the river. Hot, dry area. And so they use irrigation from the river in order to get the water on there. It's, let's see if I've got my next slide. Yes. Terraces for growing and schist in clay. It's schisty. So schisty rock. So schist is basically it's layers of mud that then went underground and were superheated and turned into rock and then came back up later on. So, so anyway, so now they have that as a very rocky, dry soil, high mineral content to give a lot of character.
Yeah, because the picture on the right just looks like rock. I would think nothing would grow on it.
Right. Clearly. You know what I should put here?
Right. Here's a bunch of rocks. I'll just plant some grapevines.
So I'd say the making of dry reds is really kind of, it's not brand new to there, but it's really catching fire.
Okay.
All right. So getting more and more of them of the winemakers within Portugal to think about making dry reds for the world. The world is discovering them and loving them, and they should. I think they're delicious. Instead of just or in addition to. Okay. Makes a little more sense. Who we're drinking tonight, Wine and Soul, dominantly makes dry wines. Oh. But they do make port with it too. Okay. Which, in my opinion, they should. I love port. All right. Next, please. All right, Wine and Soul. In fact, if you want, before we go on, let's pop out and get some comments on the wine. Okay. And then we'll go into the wine. I like that their dog is in the picture. I knew it. I said that as I put it in there. I said somebody is going to say, "Yay!" They put their dog in the picture. I like them even more now. I love it. I wasn't sure about the wine, but they're dog lovers. Boom. Yep. Extra 1 or 2 points probably at the end of the night rating. There you go, just because they put their dog in it. Okay.
I thought the dog let them in the picture.
Well, yeah, the dog let them in the picture.
Oh, yeah. Good point, Jerry. Ooh, boy, that is minerally. That's nice. All right. What are you guys thinking? I've been talking a lot. Are you guys enjoying this wine? Thoughts?
See thumbs up.
I see some nods.
Thumbs up, nods.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I opened it about 7:45-ish, so about 40 minutes ago. But I didn't really start drinking it until 30-ish minutes ago. I thought it was like extraordinarily fruit forward at first, but it's really settled down since then. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I think it's really coming to its own. I like this one a lot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I agree with Elizabeth. I don't get the as much of that allspice stuff, but I do get some of. I get like a little bit of that, but maybe like more like brown sugary or something else than straight up like allspice, or maybe a little bit, again, a little bit of that peppery.
Chai.
Yeah, like chai or something else. Like it's like really close, but it's like not quite. Yeah.
I really like chai as an observation, especially on the nose,
Mhm.
but I can go on the palate too. Yeah.
Ours has been
A
open
lot of
almost
dark-
an hour,
Oh, has it?
and it's really opened up and gotten more velvety than it was initially. It did have a big fruit, though. I agree with Chris, and but it's tamed down quite a bit, different flavors and different nose, but very, very good, very drinkable.
Good, good. I tell you, one of the things I like about it is it does have significant fruit presence, which is really pleasing to American palates, but it has all these secondary qualities and a really nice dry finish, which is a bit old world to me. So it's kind of a nice bridge between the two.
Sure.
They're not just making an American styled wine in Portugal. This is their own wine style. It's got great fruit quality, but we've got a lot of other things to discuss in there.
I kind
Yeah,
of
and
smell
real
like
quick-
some earthiness to it, you know. So when I took a really good whiff, you know, and mine's been open for maybe 45 minutes or so, I felt like I don't know how to explain it, but like just that earthy quality.
Would you
Almost
say
like grass a little bit.
Do you think it kind of it could be like red clay? Something like that?
Maybe there's something that's not necessarily fruity, which I initially smelled and tasted, but now I feel like I smell something different, but I can't quite put my finger on it. So the best way would be something earthy, almost like, I don't want to say fresh cut grass because that's not quite right either. Or, you know, I think of, you know, maybe it's just rained too hard here, you know, and I feel like I smell like what, you know, like the outdoors, but
Linda,
initially I felt cherry and now I feel more that earthy tone, but I
Linda,
can't really describe it.
I get that too. It's like a wet peat type thing. Like,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. I get that too.
Okay.
And I totally agree with the cherry. Jerry also kind of mentioned, I was like, with the fruit forwardness, I do think it went from like, yeah, that kind of bright cherry. I got a lot of blueberry at first. Now I think it's settling a little bit more into more of those dark fruits as it kind of sells in. But yeah, the peat observation I think is also really, really good. Exactly what you were saying, Linda.
Nice. I love it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then as we can see, Paul is kissing up in the chat box.
Yeah, Paul agrees with that beautiful lady. I think that's a good call.
Making those points.
Macon's not far enough away to disagree. Plus, she was right. So
Yeah.
there we go. Okay, let's head back on.
Okay.
Let's talk about wine and soul. So this is a husband and wife team. The project began in 2001. Sandra Tavares da Silva and Jorge Serodio Borge. All right, I want full credit. Sandra's background in education is agronomy and enology. And a lot of it, especially the enology side, was in Italy.
Okay.
Which honestly, this got such a nice dry finish. I totally get that style. Jorge is actually a 5th generation winemaker. The family's been making wine for a long, long time. He also has his degree in enology. They fell in love, wanted to start their own thing, and started with one vineyard, which is not this vineyard. This is their second purchase, I believe. They now have 3 different vineyards.
Oh, good for them.
And they're growing and continuing to kind of, they're going, and what they like to do is go and revitalize some older growth wine, grapes, grape vines, thank you. And then just really add new modern agronomy, farming techniques to it.
I do love how Europe is respecting the old vines and keeping them.
Well, they make better wine.
Yeah, well.
There you go.
So,
So they're actually making a combination of port and dry. They really like one of the things that sounded like as I was reading there is they look for these people that were making port, like traditional sweeter port wines for a long time, and looking at those vines and saying, we can make some badass big red, dry red there as well, and jumping in and doing that. And they're getting great ratings across the board on their stuff. So I think they're a fantastic team making some great wines. The vine age on these guys, 35 years. All right. So starting to get up there.
yeah.
And it's got great complexity and intensity, I think, on these guys.
Oh, yeah.
And this vineyard is terraced. Actually, here is the exact vineyard. There it is.
Oh, wow. You could see some terraces behind them too in the other picture as well.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, this is the winery behind them. So they actually set up on a hill, I think, within the winery. And then this is their winery.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And a lovely couple. So here is the this is the vineyard that we're drinking from.
Okay, so right now I'm just seeing the rock, basically. So
yeah, like you can see how when the rock falls away, this is that clay. Yeah, and it falls away. So yeah, it's clay and rocks.
But I feel like I'm not seeing like vines.
Oh, but it's probably a dormant part of the year.
Okay.
Wine and Soul is rustic.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. That's the kind of building we want.
I find it interesting that it is, because that's one of the things I was going to ask is because this is Wine and Soul on the bottle. And I thought maybe that was just for like the US or the English speaking countries,
right.
But it actually says Wine and Soul.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And they are Portuguese.
Right.
Like they're not Americans that move there. They're Portuguese.
Wait, we have a couple of chat.
Oh, good.
So let me pull up the chat box a moment. Oh. If she agrees with me on the photo. Yeah, that we're not seeing the vines really. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm they cut them back. It was probably winter, I would guess.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so you have those brown gnarled vines blending in with the brown rock.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I didn't know if it was like prior to them planting or,
Yeah.
but that was.
That came right from their website. So when they said this is the vineyard.
Yeah.
And so if it wasn't, then
No, I'm sure it is the vineyard, but and I actually love this building. I love things that look reclaimed.
Yes. Yeah.
Should I go forward?
Yes, please.
All right.
All right. So let's talk about this guy. So this wine has 91 and 93 points. So here it's showing it as outstanding, a wine of superior character and style. 95 and above would be classic. It's pushing up there, or a very good wine with special qualities. And 80 to 84, good, a solid, well-made wine, or even a mediocre wine down in the 70s. Remember, basically, the 50s don't exist for whatever reason. Though I will be happy to list some wines privately that I think should have a 50. But
we will do that when we're not recording.
That's right. Look, they're not recommended. I got some names for you. Anyway, so for our wines tonight, I think our new thing is we've been having it thrown in the chat box, right?
Just type in the chat box what you think. Okay, so Chris and Robin, both at 92. Linda, Brenda, Laura, and John, 93 and 94.
Nice.
Linda Roquefort, 91. Both the Hogsheads 91?
Or is that just Jerry?
Okay, all right, yes, both 91.
Both, okay.
We never know because Jerry's in control of the computer and keyboard. Caroline, 92.
Nice.
Yeah, and I would have said 92.
good.
I really like this. I find it very, reds are my thing anyway, but I find it very easily drinkable. And I was a little worried because we were, going out of, we've been in California for a couple weeks.
Right. Right.
So then to go to Portugal where we hadn't been before as a group. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you guys all really like the wine. I really love this wine. I would give it an easy 92 as well.
Okay, so and Rachel thinks 93 and David 91, so they averaged to a 92 as well.
There we go. That, by the way, this is one of the higher, if not the highest average rating
Oh yeah,
we've
absolutely.
seen. And I love that you guys are doing this because this has a really nice dry quality, really
Mhm.
good character. This is not your average American fruit hug wine.
True,
This
true.
has got old world qualities, and I really feel like I love the fact that it's being appreciated.
Well,
That's one of the things I love about it. I mean, I want this with a big peppercorn steak or something like
yeah.
that, you know?
Absolutely. I think it's interesting because we've spent this over a year now doing this with a lot of the same people. And when we have reps in the store and we do wine tastings in the store, they're going to have a much more educated.
Oh, this is going to be a lot of
populace
fun.
in the- yeah,
They're going to get a
the
lot
reps are
better
going to be a lot more
questions.
challenged
It's gonna
than
be
they've
great.
been in the
I'm going to be like,
past.
that's my team. That's Team Tuesday.
Exactly. There you go.
That's it. That's you guys. Team Tuesday.
Team Tuesday.
I like it. All right. So shall we, we'll go on to sources and look at what we're tasting next week.
Before we'll go on to sources and tasting for next week in just a moment, but are there any last questions or comments or anything you noticed that you want to talk about before we stop talking about this one?
Okay, well, here's a question, because Paul actually mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, and I told him, I said, you should ask. But I think we always just get caught up in the videos or in the chat. But what exactly determines the alcohol content? So I know sometimes we talk about the percent ABV, you know, and so is it, you know, time? Is it the amount of sugar? Is it the grape?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of interesting, you know, so there's expectations for certain varietals, but I'm kind of curious myself, you know, part of me thinks it's a little bit of everything, you know, but, you know, just wondering what would determine that, you know, for.
A little bit of everything is exactly correct, Linda. But let me start with the most important factor, right? Number one most important factor is how much sugar do you start with in the solution, right? So the longer you leave the grapes on the vine, the more ripe they become. At some point, they lower, as they become more ripe, the acidity is going to decrease and the sugar content is going to increase. And so there will come a point where if you want to go full big ripe, that you may lose freshness and you get something that tastes very dried fruit and, you know, dates and figs and that kind of a thing. And you might get a 16+% wine. So the challenge for them is pick with enough sugar, but leave enough complexity for the flavors that they're trying to obtain. And that is the reason why winemakers have got to know what they want out of their grapes, and they will taste it and work with them in that way in order to find what they want. So the number one thing is how much, so you crush them, you've got juice, how much sugar is in that solution of juice. Then you have yeast, all right? So the yeast can vary with how aggressive it is. Like a champagne yeast is more aggressive than say something you would have from say Vino Verde, because you have lower alcohol ish. All right. But there are yeasts that are more and less aggressive. But within a spectrum, they're pretty close. So that goes to what's next, time, right? So how long are you going to let the yeast munch on that before you cut it off? And so that is more of the technique. So it's not usually as much about which yeast you're using as how long you let that yeast work on it. But they're measuring that. So you can take measurements every day and see which alcohol level you're in. And whether there are certain winemakers that are just going to taste it until it tastes what they want. And there are other ones that are going to cut it off saying, nope, I don't want it above 14.
Okay.
That's going to be a winemaker's choice. So that's where I was saying yes, because
Why
there are
would you
so
not want
many
it?
options.
I mean, why I don't understand why you would cut it off as far as alcohol, like that you would say, I don't want it above 14.
Because so the more alcohol you get, the more dry you're going to get.
Oh, okay.
So maybe you don't want as dry of a wine.
Okay.
For example, the Germans You end up mostly with lower alcohol wines because they leave more sugar in the solution. So you have a sweeter wine. If you want to
Okay.
make a sweet wine, you're going to have lower alcohol,
Okay.
that kind of a thing. Or a fruitier wine, you're going to have lower alcohol, maybe.
So what's the average like alcohol content for port then? But you're adding other alcohol. to
You're adding
port,
other
so-
alcohol to it. So it's 18 to 20%. I mean,
Okay.
it's significant.
That's what I thought, but
Mhm.
then you said sweet was lower, so I got confused.
No, I think that's probably one reason they fortify it
Okay.
to bump it
To
up.
bump it up.
And it adds stability. So the more alcohol, the longer it can hang out. And-
Yeah, and
and
ports age a
Port
lot.
is
Mhm.
meant to be aged
Mhm.
significantly.
All ports?
Not all, but in general, yes.
Okay.
Mhm. They make non-vintage like cheap port.
Mhm.
It's a thing.
So when they're making wine, are they always adding a specific yeast, or sometimes are they just using like the yeast that is on the grape?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. As with many things in wine, all right. So sometimes they inoculate with a specific yeast. Many times they use whatever's on the grape skins.
Okay.
So it just depends on the winemaker again. And the region. Some regions require you to only use native yeast,
Mm.
and that kind of a thing. But
Is that more of a French thing?
it is very French,
Mhm.
but not exclusively.
Okay.
So that is, let's see, temperature can also affect it. So if you have at a lower temperature, you're going to have slower acting yeast. It will make less alcohol. And if you allow it to go at a higher temperature, you'll get more alcohol, but you'll get more potential off flavors. It's another balancing act.
Okay.
There's a lot to making the alcohol, what makes the alcohol, and why different choices affect the alcohol levels that may have nothing to do with what alcohol level in the end you get. You're working for certain flavors. Sometimes the alcohol is an afterthought.
Yeah.
You want a certain alcohol, then the flavors may be an afterthought. The truth is, it all is a balance.
That's why people have educations in this
That's right.
to
That's
learn
why.
how to do that.
That's why there's enology
Yeah.
school, right?
Yeah, because to me it's such a balance of chemistry and art,
Mhm.
and it's
That's right.
plus it just depends on what your palate is too, if you're actually tasting everything that it gives you. So
That's true. I think it's just another level of showing. I mean, the fact that was a long description,
yeah.
it
Yes,
shows.
a lot of factors.
It's just, that's why I love wine, because there's so much to it.
Yeah.
Right, but it's true. So all those variables, play into it.
Mhm.
And it's I think your description of it, and I put it in the chat, food
I just
chemistry
saw
and
it.
art. I was thinking that, and you said that out loud, and I was like, it's why she's amazing, so, but it's true, so you have to have the scientific knowledge, but also that in between, so what do you, at the end of the day, you want it to taste good, to your consumer,
Right.
but you think of all the examples, we've all probably had amazing wines and really awful wines, and sometimes you think about things like the percent alcohol content, so I was just, I was curious, because there are some wines that you open up and you're like, I'm not sure this is consumable. Could be a disinfectant, so, and others where you're just like, gosh, what is this? You're kind of driven to it, so I thought Paul's question was actually quite a good one and a complicated one, and it's, it merits a long answer, so that
Well,
makes sense.
Yeah.
I hope nobody nodded off while I was.
No, thank you for asking.
That was a great
And then-
question.
Am I off mute?
Paul has a follow-up.
Am I off mute? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, that new setup for me. And then there's also the business side of it also, where if you've got a certain alcohol content, you can't get into some states and things like that.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, Paul. I mean, there's no doubt that there are going to be targets for other reasons too. It could be that even, within certain countries, they could say, oh, nope, you can't go beyond X X ABV, and so you're going to do the best you can within that parameter.
Mhm.
There's just a ton to it. There's a lot to it,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of ways to manipulate it.
Mhm. Yeah,
I've
absolutely.
been told by several vintners that they have microorganisms in their winery. They can't keep it out of the wine, but that's what makes their wine distinctive and different from the person down the street who has their own
Okay.
microorganisms. Have you heard anything like that before? It sounds a little.
Yeah, well, there certainly bacterium are going to jump in there to some degree, right? Greater or lesser, depending on what's going on. If you're dealing with, say, Sutter Home in California, there's going to be a very minimal degree of bacterium because those guys are making so much wine. They're passing through so much juice through there. They want it to be consistent, and they're going to make good and sure that there's not. But then you have this guy, Brash Higgins, is this wonderful producer in Australia, and he literally will take several of his wines and he puts them in a barrel and he sticks it outside and takes the top off and goes home. And he's inoculating with what's coming around, and he's doing it on purpose. So you have these extremes, and then everything in between. And once again, that adds to the artistry, the style, the desire of what they're doing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So any more questions or comments about this one? Okay.
All right.
We're going to reveal for next week. First, we have to think our sources.
That's right. Okay, here we go. Wine Folly, always amazing, amazing. Buy their books, go to their website. They're fantastic. If you want to do any research or, just listen to me. Wineandsoul.com, not shocking. That's who we're drinking.
Right.
Wikipedia, very helpful in the region. Decanter.com had the schist picture. It was the schistiest picture I could find. So, all right. So next week, we are heading to...
Ready?
Yes.
Okay.
France. All right. But
We haven't been
where
there
are
before.
we going in France? We are going to revisit one of my favorite grapes in the world, which is Tannat. So Tannat, the Tannat we drank was from Uruguay. Uruguay is kind of having this renaissance of Tannat, right? But Tannat's a French grape. And there is one small region based around one town in France that still specializes in Tannat. And it's such small production that of the options that I could get for French single varietal Tannat, there was one for the whole state of Florida.
Wow.
That had me a little worried at first because I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, but luckily it was a really good one.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a wonderful distributor who brings in these great wines. Vlad is fantastic. So anyway, so Wine Enthusiast, 92 points. We are drinking 100% Tannat from France next week. Pairings, cassoulet, roast lamb, Roquefort cheese. Linda, can you help us out? And sausages, as well as steak and all kinds of things that you could throw in there. But I like to get a little fun with the pairings and say things I haven't said before,
Absolutely.
like cassoulet.
I have no idea what that is.
It's kind of a bean and sausage dish that you can then put in some pork or duck.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's a bit of a stew kind of.
That's right up your alley.
Yes.
You love stew. Yeah.
Yes. So yes, I would like that. Thank you.
Okay.
It's-
Yeah, I'll work on that.
Right. So I think it's going to be a ton of fun to drink this with you guys. I know everyone here had the Uruguayan,
That's not, except
Yeah.
for Caroline.
except for Caroline.
Mhm.
Or Caroline.
Yep.
Or Sweet Caroline, either way. But the Uruguayan is still in the store. If
Mhm.
anyone wants to,
Do a comparison.
do a comparison
Mhm.
tasting, I might do so myself. But I'm really excited because I knew this existed,
Mhm.
and it took me a couple of months to find this being available. So I hope you guys will join us. I am super wine geek excited to try French Tannat. I hope you guys are too.
Yeah, no, that'll be great because we get to taste it from the source.
Yes, I mean this is
Yeah.
this is where it all began.
Yeah.
So
Very cool.
There we go. All right.
All right, well,
Let's-
I'm going to stop the recording in just a moment,
Well,
so,
let's toast.
yeah, I need a little bit more too.
Okay. Just a little bit because I want the rest for me. You want to put it back to us?
Yep.
There we go.
All right, hold on. It's hopping to invite. There we go. Stop share.
All right. Thank you all so much. I'm really glad you enjoyed the wine. We will play more with Portugal. I love their wines. I think they're fantastic. And it makes me happy that you guys all enjoyed it as well. Oh, you know what? Beforehand, one thought before now everyone's like, oh, we were just about to toast and Jeff's going to talk some more. For how many of you is this the first Portuguese wine you've had? Raise your hand. 1,
Okay.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Almost everybody.
Maybe, I don't know.
I could count port.
It looks like over half.
Yeah, are you counting port or not?
No, let's exclude dry Portuguese red.
Yeah.
How about that? You're good.
Okay.
Good point, Dave. Good point. Yes.
Yeah. So pretty much all of us then.
Yeah.
Yeah, except for you.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you know, I just drink way too much, or not
Cheer-
enough.
Cheers,
See-
everyone.
All right.
Oh.
Oh.
There we go. I just went off of